Ladies, I'm going to be blunt with you today. Relationships can be confusing. There's love, there's attraction, there's chemistry, but sometimes there's something else. Something that we don't always want to admit, but we know is there. He's using you. I'm Matthew Hussey, and I've worked with countless women around the world, helping them navigate the highs and lows of relationships. Today, we're diving deep into how to spot when a man is using you so you can regain your power, your confidence, and your emotional well-being. When you're in a relationship, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of finding someone who seems to have potential. There's chemistry, there's connection, and you feel hopeful about what could come next. But then something starts to feel off. You find yourself reaching out to him when you need someone, whether it's for a pick-me-up, a simple chat, or support during a tough time, but he's always too busy, and it's not just once or twice, it's a recurring pattern. At first, you might make excuses for him. He's got a demanding job, he's working on personal goals, maybe he's just overwhelmed. And while these explanations may hold water at times, what happens when this becomes the norm? What happens when your needs are constantly put on the back burner while his seem to always be prioritized? Here's the truth. If he's always too busy when you need him, you have to ask yourself, is he really that busy, or is he simply not making the effort to prioritize you? We all have busy lives, and there will always be moments where someone can't drop everything to be there for us. But a person who truly cares about you, someone who values your presence in their life, will always make time when you're in need. They'll find a way to show up for you, even if it means adjusting their schedule or putting in extra effort. The problem arises when you notice a pattern, when it's a recurring issue, and you're always the one left waiting, feeling like your needs don't matter as much. It's one thing to be understanding when a person has a legitimate reason for being unavailable, but it's another thing entirely when it feels like you're being continually pushed aside. You might begin to feel invisible, like you're not important enough to receive their attention or time. In these moments, you're not just facing a schedule conflict, you're dealing with a deeper reality that he may not value you the way you deserve to be valued. The emotional support you need and the time you deserve to share with him are not things he's willing to offer, at least not consistently. Instead, his focus remains on his own priorities, his own convenience, and his own schedule. What's troubling is that sometimes it's not even that he's genuinely too busy in the way he's claiming. It could be that he's simply choosing not to prioritize you or the relationship. We all know the saying, you make time for what's important to you. And if someone truly cares about you, they'll make the time, no matter how packed their calendar may be. When you're in a relationship with someone who always seems too busy, it can start to erode your sense of worth. You might begin to feel like you're always giving, always waiting, and never receiving the same in return. Over time, this behavior can make you feel insignificant and unappreciated. If you're always left waiting for him to find time, it's important to assess whether he's truly there for you or if you're simply an afterthought to him. So what do you do? First, stop making excuses for his behavior. Trust your gut, pay attention to the repeated patterns and recognize them for what they are. You deserve someone who is willing to show up when you need them, someone who values you enough to make time, not just when it's convenient, but when it matters most. Don't accept being constantly sidelined, and don't convince yourself that this is just how it is. You deserve more than someone who's too busy to be there for you. When you're in a relationship, one of the most fundamental elements is transparency. It's the sharing of who you are, what you're passionate about, and where you see your life going. It's what helps to build a deeper connection, trust, and intimacy. So when you find that he keeps you in the dark about his life, you should be concerned. If a man is not willing to open up to you, there's a good chance that he's not truly invested in the relationship, or worse, he might be hiding something that could affect you both. It starts subtly at first. You ask him about his day, his interests, or his family, and the conversation quickly gets deflected or brushed aside. Maybe he gives you short, vague answers or avoids talking about certain subjects altogether. At first, you might brush this off. Perhaps he's a private person or just not ready to open up fully. But as time passes, you start noticing a pattern. It becomes clear that certain parts of his life remain completely off limits, and you're left feeling like an outsider in a relationship that's supposed to be about partnership and sharing. This lack of transparency isn't always about big secrets or hidden affairs. Sometimes it's the small, everyday things that matter. Does he talk about his friends but never actually introduce you to them? Does he avoid discussing future plans or never mention his family? If he's unwilling to share these details, it signals that he's not treating you as a true partner in his life. There's a boundary, whether intentional or not, that keeps you from fully knowing him, and that's a problem. What's troubling is that when someone keeps you in the dark, it creates emotional distance. Relationships are built on shared experiences, mutual understanding, and the trust that comes from being vulnerable with one another. When he refuses to let you in, he's creating a wall between you, whether he's conscious of it or not. It makes it harder for you to build a real connection, to feel like you're growing together, and it often leaves you feeling more like a convenience than a priority. At the same time, there's a deeper layer of what's happening when someone withholds information. It might indicate that he's not fully committed to the relationship, or that he doesn't view you as someone worthy of full transparency. A man who truly cares about you will want you to be involved in his life, not as an afterthought or someone who is kept at a distance. He will introduce you to important people, share details about his world, and involve you in decisions that affect both of you. If he's not doing these things, it could be because he's keeping his options open, or he simply doesn't want to give you the full picture. You might also find that the more you press for answers, the more he pulls away. When you start to ask questions, he might get defensive or make you feel like you're overstepping. This tactic is often used by people who don't want to be fully exposed because it allows them to keep control over the narrative. He may feed you just enough information to keep you interested, but never enough to really understand who he is or what his intentions are. Being kept in the dark can have a serious emotional toll on you. It can leave you feeling uncertain, confused, and unimportant. You deserve someone who is willing to open up, to be honest with you, and to share his world with you. If he refuses to do so, it's a clear sign that something isn't right. A relationship should be a partnership, not a game of mystery. You deserve someone who treats you as an equal and who isn't afraid to let you in on the parts of his life that matter. If that's not happening, it's time to reassess whether this relationship is truly serving you and whether you're being valued as you should be. When you're in a relationship, whether casual or more serious, communication is key. It's how you stay connected, show interest, and build trust. But one of the most telling signs that he might be using you is when he only reaches out when it's convenient for him. This dynamic often starts small but can quickly become a pattern that leaves you feeling undervalued and emotionally drained. At first, you might chalk it up to him being busy, or maybe he's just going through a hectic period in his life. After all, we all have times when we get caught up in our own world and forget to check in. However, if you start noticing a consistent trend where he only reaches out when it's convenient for him, something is off. It may be when he's bored, when he's had a long day and needs a pick-me-up, or when he's lonely and looking for someone to fill a void. But outside of those times, he's nowhere to be found. You could find yourself asking, why does he only contact me when he needs something? The answer might be that you're serving a purpose in his life without him giving much back. When he reaches out only when it suits his needs, whether it's for a last-minute date, to ease his loneliness, or to get some emotional validation, you're essentially just a convenience for him, not someone he genuinely wants to invest in. This behavior shows that he is taking advantage of your availability and your feelings without reciprocating the same level of effort or consideration. When someone truly cares about you, they make time for you. They don't reach out just when it's convenient or when they feel like it. They want to connect with you regularly, share their thoughts, check in on how you're doing, and involve you in their life, not just when they need something. A relationship should be about mutual care and attention, not just convenience. You deserve someone who reaches out because they genuinely want to know how you're doing, because they value your presence in their life, and not just when it's easy for them. But what happens when you're the one doing all the reaching out? If you're constantly the one sending the texts, making the calls, or initiating plans, and he responds when he feels like it, this is a clear sign that he's using you. You'll often find that he's unresponsive or distant most of the time, and then suddenly he's available when it fits into his life. This creates an emotional imbalance where you're the one putting in all the work to maintain the connection, and he's just taking what he can get when it's convenient for him. This can start to wear on you emotionally. It's easy to feel unimportant when someone only seems to think of you when they need something. It can leave you questioning your worth in the relationship, as if you're just an option rather than a priority. Over time, you may find yourself feeling like you're just filling a gap in his life rather than being someone he genuinely values. If you find yourself in a situation where you're always on the receiving end of this one-sided communication, it's important to recognize it for what it is. You deserve more than someone who only reaches out when it's convenient for them. You deserve someone who values you, who makes the effort to be present in your life, and who is as invested in the relationship as you are. Pay attention to the patterns and don't settle for being someone's backup plan or emotional filler. In any healthy relationship, balance is essential. Both people need to contribute equally, whether it's through communication, effort, or emotional support. Relationships thrive on reciprocity. And when one person is consistently doing all the work, it can lead to feelings of frustration, resentment, and burnout. If you're finding that you're the one doing all the work in your relationship, it's time to take a step back and assess what's going on. At the core of this issue is the simple fact that relationships should never be one-sided. Whether it's making plans, reaching out to check in, or initiating conversations, both partners need to invest in maintaining the connection. But when you feel like you're the only one putting in the effort, it's a sign that something is seriously off. You're the one always texting first, planning the dates, or trying to keep the conversation flowing. You might be making compromises and sacrifices while he seems to be coasting along, offering minimal effort in return. Initially, this dynamic might seem manageable, especially if he apologizes for being busy or claims he's just not good at initiating. You might be understanding, thinking that everyone has their off days or that it's just a phase. But over time, if you're always the one carrying the emotional and practical load of the relationship, it starts to take a toll. You might begin to feel like a caregiver rather than a partner. You're constantly the one reaching out, trying to fix things, making plans, or providing support, while he offers very little in return. This creates a huge imbalance in the relationship, leaving you to feel like you're in it alone. The emotional burden of doing all the work can also leave you feeling unappreciated. You might start to feel like your needs aren't being met or that your efforts are going unnoticed. When you're always the one making things happen, it can feel like he's not really invested in the relationship, or that you're simply not important enough for him to put in the same amount of effort. It can make you question your value in his life and whether you're truly being seen and heard. Over time, this one-sided dynamic can create resentment. You may feel taken for granted, like your time, energy, and emotions are being depleted without anything meaningful coming back in return. The relationship may begin to feel more like a chore than something you want to be a part of. You're left wondering why you're putting in so much effort when he seems so passive. This can be emotionally exhausting and leave you feeling like you're stuck in a cycle where you're always trying harder but not getting the results you deserve. In addition, constantly doing all the work in a relationship can lead to a loss of self-worth. You might start to doubt your own needs and desires, thinking that you're asking too much or being unreasonable by wanting more effort from him. But the truth is, it's perfectly reasonable to expect mutual effort in a relationship. You should never have to carry the emotional weight alone. If you find yourself in a relationship where you're doing all the work, it's time to have an honest conversation with him about how you're feeling. It's important to express your needs and desires for a more balanced, equal partnership. You deserve someone who meets you halfway, who puts in the same effort, and who values you enough to match your investment in the relationship. If he's unwilling to change or doesn't acknowledge the imbalance, it's a sign that the relationship isn't serving you in the way it should. You deserve someone who actively contributes to the relationship and who makes the effort to make you feel seen, heard, and valued. When you're investing time and energy into someone, it's natural to want clarity about where the relationship is headed. You want to know if it's going somewhere serious or if it's just a casual fling. However, one of the most frustrating signs that he might be using you is when he consistently avoids defining the relationship. You've probably asked him where you stand, or perhaps you've tried to bring up the future, but each time he avoids giving you a direct answer. Instead, he deflects the conversation, changes the subject, or gives you vague, non-committal responses like, let's just take it slow, or I'm not sure what I want right now. This avoidance isn't just a harmless delay in defining things, it's a tactic used by people who don't want to be held accountable or don't want to fully invest in the relationship. When someone avoids defining the relationship, it often means that they don't see you as a priority or aren't willing to make the commitment you're hoping for. If he truly cares about you and values the relationship, he'll be open to having discussions about where things are going. He'll be willing to communicate his feelings and intentions, and he'll want to know what you need as well. But if he's consistently deflecting, it's a sign that he might not be as invested as he should be. One of the most significant reasons people avoid defining the relationship is because it gives them the freedom to keep their options open. If you're not officially together, then he doesn't have to be fully accountable to you, and he can continue exploring other possibilities without feeling like he's committed to one person. This often happens when he's enjoying the benefits of the relationship, such as your company, affection, or emotional support, but doesn't want the responsibility or the obligation of actually making it official. He gets to enjoy the perks of being in a relationship without actually putting in the work or making the necessary commitments. This situation can leave you feeling stuck, uncertain, and emotionally vulnerable. You may find yourself constantly wondering where you stand and whether your feelings are reciprocated. Are you just a temporary option for him, or does he truly want a future together? The lack of clarity creates an emotional roller coaster, leaving you in a state of confusion, constantly questioning whether he's in this for the long haul or just passing time. Additionally, this lack of definition can lead to feelings of insecurity. If he's unwilling to define the relationship, you might feel like you're not important enough for him to commit to, or that he's not as invested in you as you are in him. It can make you question your worth and whether you're truly being valued. If he's hesitant to have the conversation, it's a sign that he may not be emotionally ready to make you a priority, or perhaps he simply doesn't see a future with you. At the same time, the lack of commitment can also prevent you from moving forward in your life. When you're stuck in a relationship with no clear definition, it holds you back from pursuing other potential opportunities or finding someone who is willing to commit. You're left in limbo, investing time and emotions into someone who may not feel the same level of commitment. If you find yourself in a relationship where he's constantly avoiding defining things, it's time to take a step back and evaluate whether this is the kind of relationship that aligns with your needs and desires. You deserve someone who is willing to communicate openly, someone who is ready to take the next steps with you and build something meaningful. If he's not willing to have that conversation and define what you are to each other, then it might be time to reevaluate whether you're truly being valued in the way you deserve. You deserve clarity, commitment, and honesty, not confusion and uncertainty. When you're in a relationship, it's natural to listen to the words your partner says. Words are a powerful tool for expressing emotions, intentions, and desires. However, words alone are not enough to build a strong, lasting relationship. Actions speak louder than words, and when someone's actions don't align with what they say, it creates a significant disconnect. If you find yourself in a situation where his actions don't match his words, it's time to reassess the relationship and understand what this inconsistency really means. One of the most common ways this plays out is when he tells you how much he cares, how much he wants the relationship to work, or how committed he is, but his behavior says otherwise. For example, he might frequently tell you that you're important to him, yet he repeatedly cancels plans, forgets important dates, or doesn't make the effort to check in with you regularly. These mixed signals are not only confusing, but they're also a sign that he may not be as invested in the relationship as he's letting on. When someone cares about you, their actions should demonstrate that care in tangible ways by being present, putting in effort, and showing consistency. If his actions don't reflect this, his words begin to lose their meaning. Another way this plays out is when he promises to make changes or improve certain aspects of the relationship but never follows through. He might say things like, "I'll be better about communicating," or "I'll make more time for you," but those promises never materialize. Instead, you find yourself waiting for things to change, and yet the same patterns of behavior continue. This is not only frustrating, but also emotionally draining. It creates false hope, leaving you feeling like you're waiting for someone who isn't actually willing to make the effort to meet you halfway. The problem with this mismatch between words and actions is that it creates a sense of instability. Relationships are built on trust, and trust is built on consistency. When what he says doesn't align with what he does, it makes it difficult to rely on him. You begin to question his sincerity, and this can lead to a constant state of uncertainty. You're left wondering whether his words are just empty promises meant to placate you in the moment, or if he genuinely means what he says. And even if he genuinely believes what he's saying, his inability or unwillingness to follow through on those words suggests that his priorities aren't aligned with yours, or he's not as committed as he claims to be. This mismatch can also undermine your self-esteem and emotional well-being. When someone tells you they care but doesn't show it through their actions, it can make you feel unimportant or like you're not worthy of the effort you deserve. You might start to doubt your own value, wondering if you're asking for too much by expecting someone to follow through on their promises. This internal conflict can lead to feelings of insecurity and frustration, making it even harder to move forward or have honest conversations about the relationship. You may also find yourself excusing his behavior because of his words. If he's always telling you how much he cares, it's easy to ignore the fact that his actions don't line up. You might justify his behavior by telling yourself that he's just going through a rough time or meant well. However, continuously making excuses for his actions only enables the behavior to continue. You can't base a relationship solely on words. Actions are what reveal the true level of commitment and care someone has for you. If you find yourself in a relationship where his actions consistently don't match his words, it's essential to recognize the deeper implications. He might not be intentionally trying to hurt you, but this behavior shows a lack of consideration for your feelings and needs. A relationship where there's a disconnect between words and actions cannot thrive. Trust, security, and emotional fulfillment depend on consistency. You deserve someone who demonstrates through their actions that they care about you, that they're invested in the relationship, and that they're willing to put in the effort necessary to make things work. It's important to remember that you are not responsible for fixing someone else's lack of follow-through. If you're the one always waiting for promises to be kept or constantly trying to make excuses for his behavior, it's time to step back and evaluate whether this relationship is giving you what you need. A person who truly values you will show it with their actions, not just their words. And if he's not doing that, it's time to stop hoping for change and start thinking about what you truly deserve in a partner, someone whose actions consistently match their words.